welcome to MBA Rewired, the podcast where we are exploring the shifts that are shaping careers, leadership, and management education today. Over the course of this podcast series, we've been in conversation with industry leaders and experts across domains to understand what today's career landscape looks like and what are employers looking for in their employees. In this final episode, we bring all these conversations together because if the world of work is changing, where employers are looking for employees with career readiness, faster speed to productivity, and applied credibility, then of course management education itself needs to change as well. Keeping all of this in mind, IMI has decided to change its curriculum and bring about a new curriculum that is more aligned towards career tracks, is more agile, and far more relevant to today's changing career landscape. To understand what led to this curriculum redesign around career focused tracks and day one readiness, we are joined by Professor Suresh Ramanathan, CEO of IMI. Hello, sir, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
So this is a very exciting time because IMI is, of course, revamping its curriculum, and we've been in conversation with so many industry leaders across this sort of podcast, and they've been talking about the changing nature of work. So, what, in light of all of that, what makes this the right moment to change the curriculum?
I think this is a very, very important step that IMI is taking. And in particular, I think it addresses the needs of recruiters,
Mhm.
it addresses the needs of a changing workforce, career aspirations. And most importantly, I think it addresses a very specific gap in the market, which pertains to the kind of skills and the knowledge that students graduate with from
Mhm.
MBA programs versus the skills and the knowledge that recruiters are looking for,
Right.
right? And increasingly recruiters are telling us that what they need is students who join their organizations must have the skills to be able to hit the road running,
Right.
right? Which means that there is no opportunity or no
Mhm.
time to spend on prolonged training and things like that. They expect the students who join their organizations to be able to just literally get into the role, the role that they've been recruited into almost from day one. So that gap is a very, very important thing that IMI is trying to fill, because what we're trying with our new curriculum is to completely change our orientation away from how a traditional MBA program
Mhm.
is typically envisioned. And what we see is really what a lot of other top international schools are also moving towards. So what we're doing is perhaps a first in this country, in or at least amongst the first institutions to be able to do this.
Mhm.
And I think we are doing it at scale.
Yeah, that's amazing. Of course, you've hit upon the fact that recruiters now want people who are ready from day one, right? That is one of the requirements. Apart from that, of course, you're looking at a curriculum that is moving away from traditional subject
Yeah.
model to a more career focused model.
Yeah,
So, is that something that you feel that currently employers are also looking for?
very much so, right? Because today, in the age of AI, what is taught in the classroom, in at least the traditional classroom, was functional knowledge,
Right.
right? Which in today's days and time, day and time, a lot of that knowledge can also be acquired externally. But what students gain in the classroom, and in particular in the revamped curriculum, is it goes beyond knowledge to actually equipping yourself for the job that you are basically auditioning for,
Mm-hmm.
right? In effect, we are saying that we are preparing horses for courses. Okay.
Right.
The idea is, you want a particular career track. Let's say you want to be in marketing. We are basically looking at what are the skills necessary to
Mm-hmm.
succeed in a job like marketing or in consulting, and saying, okay, let's look at those job descriptions that employers gave us,
Mm.
and then look at our curriculum according to that, right? So
Yeah.
rather than saying, okay, we don't know what our students will fit into, we are actually saying we will actually know a lot better what you're suitable for,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of skills you possess. Do you have problem solving skills? Do you have critical reasoning skills? All those things which are extremely important to succeed on the job. And in our mind, I think that's a fundamental differentiator,
Of
because we are
course.
moving away from simply saying, oh, I'm going to teach you finance and marketing. Not that we are not going to do that, we're
Mm.
going to do a lot of that in the curriculum,
Of course.
but equally also giving you a lot of the other skills that are necessary to succeed on the job. And that orientation is, I would say, a 180-degree shift from what we have always done traditionally.
Mm-hmm. So now, when we look at, of course, you might have brainstormed a lot, looked at what the industry is looking for, and then
Mhm.
revamped the curriculum. So, were there any other indicators that made you think, oh, we need to go in this certain direction? Like, were it recruiter, apart from recruiters, were we looking at other things as well?
Yeah, so we looked at general trends
Mm-hmm.
world over, right? So how the MBA market itself is shifting, the kind of conversations that people are having. We are also listening to our alumni a lot, who are also talking about
Yes.
what they need, what skills they wish they had when
Mm-hmm.
they graduated from the program, right? And then they learned those skills on the job.
Mm-hmm.
So we have been listening to a lot of people, and everything that we have done is based on the research that we conducted
Mm-hmm.
uh, everywhere. We've also benchmarked with international institutions and some of the top institutions in this country to see, okay, what is it that we need to put into this program that is relevant, solves recruiters needs, solves student needs.
Right. So, what is, if you had to say, what is the philosophy behind this? If you had to describe it, what would you say it is?
Philosophy is to be agile.
Right.
Philosophy is to basically look at what the market
Mm-hmm.
is seeking in terms of skills and knowledge and
Mm-hmm.
capabilities, and to be ahead of the curve in delivering that value, right?
Right.
So it's very, very easy for a lot of institutions to just sit back and say, this is the way we have always done things,
Mm.
and we don't need to change much. But in a market like this, where there are changes happening every day, particularly, as I think we are all aware, how AI is
Yes.
changing the nature of business itself. It is very important for us to always be very, very agile, which means we have to be nimble, of course, very
Mm.
fast in doing things, but equally be prepared to kind of look at what kind of changes we need to make to the curriculum to be relevant to
Mm.
today's market.
Right. So of course, you're talking about agility, relevance. So we are looking at shifting to a newer
Yeah,
model, of course, what
yeah.
the sort of industry is looking for. But in whenever we transition, of course, there
Mm,
is a little bit of the old that comes in with the new.
yeah,
So when you talk about, say, moving towards career tracks, but at the same time, you've also said this, we're looking at building strong
sure,
foundations. That was, of course, what a traditional
sure,
MBA was doing.
sure.
So how is then IMI looking at creating this balance between where it's moving now and also creating strong foundations
Great
for
question,
students?
Farhana. I think it's not that we are completely changing things,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think we recognize very clearly that the foundation is still very important. We recognize the fact that many students are coming in without any experience
Mm-hmm.
of the real world in terms of the workplace. Now, it's important that we give them the foundational skills, so the core will still remain,
Right.
marketing, finance, all those things, except that now we are adding some more courses which are more what I would call career track focused. So the idea is, I give you everything that was
Mm-hmm.
already there, but equally, early on, I give you the opportunity to kind of figure out what you want to do in life,
Right.
rather than have you figure it out like 1 year into the program.
Mm.
I kind of give you the opportunity to figure out, okay, this is what I want to do. These are my aspirations. I want to be in consulting. I will give you the skills.
Hmm.
Increasingly, you go into a job interview and a recruiter asks you a question, gives you a problem or a case study to solve, right? In the traditional model, you probably would not have that much exposure to those kinds of concepts
Yeah.
till a little later. What we're trying to do is bring that forward so
Mhm.
that when you go for your job interview, you already have the mindset and the thinking and the capabilities to be able to actually answer the kind of questions that the recruiter is asking, right? And
Hmm.
that's very important, because what happens is in a typical job interview, a recruiter is trying to assess within a very short period of time, let's say 10 minutes, okay,
Yeah.
trying to assess whether you have the skills necessary to succeed at the job that they're looking to recruit you for, right? Do you have the ability to think on the spot?
Hmm.
Do you have the ability to solve problems, or reason through things? Now, these are important skills that
Absolutely.
you may not otherwise possess, right?
Hmm.
But if I start building those capabilities in you right through the program, all from day one, I start giving you those capabilities, you're in a much better position to handle those kinds of questions.
Yes. And it's very interesting you say this because when we've spoken to other industry experts over the course of this series, they've always talked about this skills requirement, and
Yeah,
I think each one of them has mentioned how important it is
yeah,
for graduates to
yeah,
have these basic skills that
yeah,
are usually found lacking after a traditional MBA.
yeah. No, I just want to share this with all the listeners. Um, I was at a conference in Seattle
Hmm.
just a few weeks ago, and there was a speaker, keynote speaker, who talked about how the future job role is going to change.
Right.
And what she said was startling. Okay, she said in the future there are going to be two types of jobs. One set of jobs which are kind of too low for AI to do. The
Mm.
blue collar,
Uh-huh.
really low key
Yeah, yeah,
jobs.
yeah.
So forget those. The other set of jobs is those which involve what she called ill-formed problems.
Mm.
Problems where there is no obvious solution. Problems where you really have to think creatively and in a very unstructured manner. Okay?
Mm.
Logical problems, things which can be done perfectly logically, AI will actually eventually, you know,
Yeah.
come into place and,
Hmm.
and take over. So the future is in creating a curriculum that gives you the skills to think in a very unstructured way,
Right.
to solve messy problems. Okay, real life is messy problems.
Mm.
Real life is not logical, multiple choice questions. Real life is a lot more than that,
Yeah, it's a lot more complicated.
lot more complicated. And so a program that prepares you for that, a program that gives you the skills to be able to kind of answer those kinds of messy questions, get your hands dirty doing
Hmm.
things. That's the important part of this. Stuff can be taught in the classroom, but unless you actually apply it,
Hmm.
unless you actually learn to grapple with problems that have no obvious solution, you are not going to be able to you know succeed in the long term,
Right.
right? So that's really what we're trying to embed into this
Hmm.
program.
So, keeping all of this in mind, could you then, explain a little bit about the architecture or the structure of the curriculum that we are now going to be putting into
Yeah.
place at IMI?
So you can think of this at multiple layers.
Hmm.
Okay, layer one is the foundational core,
Right.
right, which is continues to be the same courses, marketing and finance,
Hmm.
financial, uh, financial report analysis and things of that, right?
Yeah.
We give you all the skills that
Hmm.
are necessary from the knowledge necessary, if you will, to build your core
Of
knowledge, right?
course.
So to give you the baseline.
Right.
uh, Even within that,
Hmm.
what we have also done is some of these courses, the core courses, we are also embedding a lab. Okay, so there is theory, and then there is application of the theory, right?
Right.
And we are going to be, we are partnering with people from industry and leading academic experts to actually offer hands-on training
Mhm.
in the concepts that you're learning in class, right? So
Right.
it's like in the engineering school, very
Yeah.
often what you find is there is a theory class and then there is a lab,
Yes.
right? Same concept that we are bringing into the MBA curriculum,
Mhm.
right? So that's number one. The second layer is what we call track core,
Right.
right? Now, here, imagine you want a career in strategy,
Mhm.
strategy and consulting. Maybe you also want to minor in product management.
Okay.
Okay. Now, what we have done is create a set of core courses which are more oriented towards the tracks, the career tracks that you want to take,
All
right?
right.
So you want a career in strategy and consulting, I will give you courses on problem solving or critical
Mm.
thinking, which are very, very important
Mhm.
in a consulting role,
Absolutely.
right? So these are important. This is important knowledge and skills to possess,
Mhm.
if you are intending to specialize in these majors. Then we have a bunch of track electives.
Mhm.
Now these would be very specific to the track, that the major that you're declaring. So if you're declaring a major in product management, there may be courses in design thinking, there may be a course in go to market strategy, things like that,
Mm.
which are very, very relevant to a role in product management, right?
Yeah.
So and then we have something called open electives.
Right.
Okay, embedded throughout the program as a horizontal are two horizontals. One is AI, which is not just a course on AI,
Mhm.
but AI is integrated all through the curriculum,
So
right? Every single,
irrespective of the.
irrespective of what
Mm.
major you're taking, what track you're taking, you need to know AI, and you need to know, and AI will be embedded in the
Mm.
curriculum itself, in the pedagogy.
Right.
So throughout, everybody will be using some way or form, some shape or form
Mm.
of AI as part of their teaching, right? So that's
Great.
number one.
Yeah.
The second horizontal is ESG, right?
Mhm.
So ESG is again a very, very important thing that today's MBA students need to be aware of, because it's an important conversation that is
Yeah.
had in boardrooms, and therefore we are making our students acutely conscious of the need for good
Mhm.
governance, and focusing on the other aspects of the social aspects of things and all of that. So we really want our students to be completely aware of those things, so
Right.
it is embedded, right?
Mm.
So important aspect of the curriculum is, apart from the foundational core, there is this flexibility to choose a major and a minor in various career tracks.
Right.
So the major career tracks are product management, strategy and consulting, banking and financial markets, and market expansion and growth, right?
Right.
So these are the majors. In addition, there are minors in operations and supply chain, in data science and analytics, and in people and organizations,
Okay.
right? Now, the idea in this is you can choose a major and a minor from the two major areas.
Mhm.
So you can choose to major in consulting and minor in product management,
Okay.
or you can choose to major in consulting and minor in operations and supply chain,
All right.
right?
Right.
So you have an open slate of
Mm.
opportunities in terms of areas that you want to major in and minor
Mm.
in.
So, a lot of people, when they're hearing this for the first time, they might think that, of course, a traditional MBA is known for being multidisciplinary.
Mhm.
But they might be a little wary of the fact that, since we're focusing on a certain career path from day one, now that because we're giving them the opportunity to choose a major and minor and have so many options, so do you think that still retains the multidisciplinary
In
nature?
fact, more so,
Hmm.
right? So take, for example, a major in strategy and consulting, right?
Right.
So it's no longer the case that you will only learn courses in strategy, right? You are actually going to be learning from faculty from all the functional areas.
Okay.
Right, so you may be learning something related to supply chain strategy from an ops and supply chain professor. You may be learning something in data science. So the idea is that the career tracks are not narrow silos. The
Okay.
career tracks actually represent a multidisciplinary kind of an approach, because we are bringing in faculty from all these areas, and you're getting a flavor for how these actually apply to the job role that you're looking for, right? So if you are in strategy, for example, you need to know a little bit of finance.
True.
You need to know a little bit of ops and supply chain, right? Marketing, everything. So all of these things will actually be embedded into the curriculum.
Right. So, you've talked about these career tracks, the majors and minors. So, was there a reason why we chose these particular tracks to offer?
So this was based on a clear assessment of market demand, where the maximum job roles are,
Okay.
where the opportunities are, and also to basically take into account the fact that the market itself is shifting in certain directions, and that's really why we felt that these were the job roles that have the greatest levels of demand, right? But we also have these minors which allow you to combine things and show yourself to be a kind of a specialist in something.
Right. So, we've taken a look at the curriculum restructure, and of
Yeah.
course, it's really interesting and fascinating. But apart from that, when we look at, say, day one readiness, because that is something that a lot of alumni we've spoken to, or industry experts we've spoken to, and even you've said it, that is something that the industry is looking for.
Yeah.
So how does this curriculum prepare students for that?
It's simple, right? I think the more skills that our students possess, that they don't require to be months of training doesn't need to go into it, right? You're already ready because you have three ingredients. You have the knowledge, which is already there or which will be imparted. You have the skills, both soft and hard skills, right? So which means you should whether it is data science or analytics, you have some skills in that, the ability to handle data. But equally, you also have the soft skills, right? Leadership qualities, whether you have the ability to solve problems, whether you have the ability to think and reason and integrate information. These are all important skills that employers are looking for, and that's really what is day one readiness, to have all of that. And beyond that, I think the third one that is required is curiosity, right? And what we are hoping to create through this curriculum is actually a curiosity to learn more, because as for example, incorporating AI into this curriculum today, AI, everybody talks about AI, but we are still scratching the surface. There is so much more to learn, in terms of leveraging the capabilities of AI. And in the next 1 or 2 years, things are going to change even more dramatically, right? So what we're hoping to do through this curriculum is actually create that need to learn more, because AI, kind of enables that I will always be able to upskill myself. I will always be able to learn more. And, so that because we are embedding it into the curriculum, you will be able to get a lot more out of it. And that's really what employers really want.
Yes.
Right? You don't want to have a certain set of knowledge or skills, and then 5 years from now, you find yourself, out of the market because you don't have the requisite knowledge and skills anymore. But if your mindset is always trained to learn more and more and more, because we are leveraging the capabilities of AI, you will actually constantly upskill yourself at all times. That mindset is really what we are trying to build.
Yeah. So when we say we're building an agile and relevant curriculum, I think this is what makes
That's
it
exactly
so agile,
what it is, right? You have to be agile.
Yeah.
Right? It is not simply that the institution has to be agile.
Yeah.
You have to be agile as an individual, that you are willing to go out and explore. You're willing to experiment. You're willing to try different things. That's really what is the recipe for success in an organization.
Right. So, we've looked at, of course, the curriculum content that is changing, but along with this, the way we do assessments, the pedagogy itself has to change. So, what are the new ways in which we are planning to change, or how is the pedagogy
Sure.
then changing?
So gone are the days when you could sit in a classroom
Mm-hmm.
and just take notes passively
Mm-hmm.
while a lecturer or a professor just read out from a PowerPoint
Right.
slide, right? Those days are gone. Today, pedagogy is all about experiential learning, as they call it, and there are many ways to do experiential learning. The way I define it is there has to be a lot of hands-on, get your hands dirty kind of learning. You go do things, fail, it doesn't matter, but you learn from those failures and you keep constantly reinventing things, right?
Right.
So experimentation and experiential learning are a very important part of the new pedagogy. Role plays, simulations, variety of different ways. Flipped classrooms may be there in some cases, but
Okay.
what I'm doing in my capacity is encouraging all our faculty to adopt the best practices from around the world in creating a very interactive and a very engaging classroom.
Right.
And that is, I think, one very important thing. Equally, assessments need to shift. You talked about assessments. Assessments can no longer be tests of rote memory,
Exactly.
right? They can no longer be about, okay, do you know this concept? And I test you on that. Instead, they have to be about application of knowledge. They have to be about whether I'm able to take a problem and then translate that into something that I may use chat gpt or some llm
Yeah.
to query it. But it's not enough
Hmm.
to just then take that answer and reproduce that in your on your exam paper, right? That's laziness.
Hmm.
Okay. Instead, if you took that answer, use chat gpt or any other llm, and then you start questioning it, you start probing it even further, you start digging deeper. Okay, what if this was something different? What if scenario changed? And now you're thinking beyond what just the llm just spat out as a response.
Right.
Remember, right at the beginning I talked about ill-formed problems,
True.
that's where the future is. So that same speaker said something very interesting. Okay, and I can share this with everybody who's listening. She said that, I mean, she ran an experiment, okay, with University of California, Berkeley students. She gave a problem to the students, and she said, okay, solve this problem. One group of students basically did not have access to AI.
Right.
So their answer was quite away from the mark. It was a prediction problem. Then the experimenters used AI to make a prediction, the same prediction. AI outperformed students and human beings on this, as you would expect.
Because it is a logical reasoning.
Correct.
Yeah.
But then she told the students, you may now use AI to answer this question. 90% of them ended up just repeating what AI gave as the answer. They just copied and pasted it, and that was the response. Needless to say, that response was no better than what AI could give, right, on its own. But there were 10% of students who actually went above and beyond and asked a whole lot of different questions to the AI engine, and prompting it again and again to come up with better answers. And that actually led to better outcomes. So, if assessments are designed in such a way to encourage what we call Socratic thinking, which is the ability to ask questions,
Right.
right? That's when human beings will outperform AI. So, to all those who are listening, I'm saying that AI is a very powerful tool,
Mm.
but if you use it well, you will outperform it.
Right.
And that's really what the kind of skills that we would want to embed into our curriculum, even in our assessments
Yeah, and that's why we have it across
across
electives,
the board.
across,
Yes,
yes, across the
absolutely.
board, right? So, traditionally also, whenever IMI has revamped its curriculum, the content, we've always had a lot of industry involvement. So, particularly now when we are completely going, in a different direction, a newer direction, how much of the industry involvement has been there in this?
All through,
Yeah,
right? I think industry has been involved at every stage in this process
right.
because, see, frankly, we can't sit back and say
Hmm.
that we know what we are doing. We know that, we know best, right? Today, as I think we are all recognizing, the marketplace is changing rapidly, and even the need for a change in the curriculum happened because we listen to industry partners, right?
Right.
We listen to recruiters, we listen to alumni. So it's logical then that we would involve them in the process of co-creating this, right? So the entire curriculum is curated with input from academic experts as well as industry experts,
Hmm.
right? So we have actually listened to a lot of people before making these changes. More importantly, down the road, we hope to involve industry in actually co-creating part of the curriculum itself, right? Some of the
All
courses,
right.
some of the labs, for
Mm-hmm.
example. We are hoping that industry partners will come in and create things with us. So it's going to be a very symbiotic relationship where we are kind of creating this synergy between
Yeah,
industry and
academia.
academia, and particularly with IMI. And that will definitely help us in a big way,
Yeah.
particularly when our students need to be placed.
Yeah, because a lot of times we've often seen, and when we talk about day one readiness specifically, is that academia tends to be a little apart from what the industry needs, right? And
Yeah,
that's why recruiters have been talking about why they
that's
need
right.
to train students all over again.
That's right.
So this is going to bridge that gap.
100%, right? Because that point you just mentioned, that I have to retrain my recruits,
Yes.
that's the pain point,
Yeah.
right? They feel that a lot of students have to sometimes, and
Hmm.
it's not
Yes.
the case that it's not that it's always the case, but sometimes they feel that students have to unlearn what they learned in the classroom,
Mm.
for the simple reason that what is currently being practiced may be different from what is being taught.
Right.
And it can happen for a variety of reasons, but we are in that's another feature of our curriculum, in fact, which I should touch upon, which is that we have so-called 2 block weeks in the
Okay.
curriculum, where in each of the blocks we will have industry experts actually coming in and teaching,
Oh, okay.
right? So you are actually getting hands-on exposure to the state of the art in what is going on in a particular industry, or multiple industries,
Yeah.
right? So that's again a very important feature in the curriculum, that we are not simply teaching theory,
Hmm.
we are actually showing you how it is practiced, and giving you all these different perspectives from people, veterans in the industry, who come in and talk about what's going on there.
Yeah, so they get a first-hand knowledge
Yeah,
of, so if somebody wants to get into consulting and strategy,
yeah,
they're actually speaking to somebody
correct.
who's, living that
Imagine
life.
interacting with someone from McKinsey or
Yeah,
or
right.
Bain or some
Hmm.
organization like that.
Okay,
Yeah,
so that makes it even more interesting and
yeah,
fascinating,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Great. So, we've looked at a series of changes. We've seen that the workplace is changing. Then we've looked at how the industry needs a different kind of recruits nowadays. We're
yeah.
looking at what the curriculum needs to do. Now, when we look closer home and we look at IMI itself, right? So, in the light of this new changing curriculum, in which direction do you think the institute itself is heading?
I think it's a very transformative path.
Hmm.
uh, I think the MBA in general, and I'm now talking from a strategic angle, the MBA in general has remained undifferentiated over several decades.
Right.
It's the same finance, marketing, operations, the same specializations. Uh, Increasingly, you find that this space is getting more and more commodified,
Mm-hmm.
and also less relevant. Okay, as I think we have highlighted, uh, industry feels a disconnect, and globally, a lot of institutions are questioning the traditional MBA model.
Right.
Okay, I've spoken to some of the topmost deans at various institutions. They're all saying that, yeah, things need to change. We cannot go with business
Mm-hmm.
as usual. And they're all talking about this idea of, give it different labels. They call it the agile MBA. They call it the transformational MBA, all kinds of
Yeah.
names that are given to it. But central idea is lot more flexibility, lot more nuance, lot more differentiation in the product offering. And that's, I think, really what IMI is also doing, right? And
Right.
it's an opportunity for us to kind of shine a light on what is different about us
Mm-hmm.
compared to other institutions, that our students might be considering.
Right. So now when we're talking about students, of course, all of this that we're doing is for the students, right?
Yes.
So if you have to think about speaking directly to the students, what would you tell them, A, in a nutshell, about this new curriculum change, and also what they should be doing in these 2 years to make this new sort of
Great question.
curriculum work for them?
So and I'll answer both questions. Uh, the first part of it is, this is a curriculum that is specifically meant to help you realize your career goals,
Right.
to help you succeed. Okay, it has been very carefully curated to understand what the market is looking for, and to prepare you with the right levels of knowledge and skills to be able to get into that job role, right?
Mhm.
So in a way, it is trying to say, we are trying to identify square pegs that can fit into a square hole, rather than square pegs that fit into a round hole,
Hmm.
right? Because in the traditional functional MBA thing, uh, you really don't know about fit, right? How well you will fit into that role.
Right.
Here, because of our continuous assessment, we will know whether you have the skills that are necessary to succeed, for example, in a strategy role or consulting role, or in a product management
Hmm.
role. So we know a lot more about your aptitude, your skills, and the knowledge, and that will really help you succeed, once you join that organization,
Hmm.
right? And the critical part of what we're trying to accomplish is that, this is something that is very important from a long term perspective. Okay, and let me explain that point a little more carefully. I think too often our students are focused on immediate outcomes, right? What job I will get, how much money will I make,
Yeah.
right? Everybody is talking about ROI.
Yeah.
But if you have the capabilities, the knowledge, hopefully the conversation will shift towards, where will I be 5 years from now? Okay. And if we can give you that,
Hmm.
if I can give you, that kind of knowledge and skill to be able to not just get that job, but to be able to succeed at it.
Hmm.
Remember that once you graduate from this program, you're competing not just against IMI students, but you're competing against students from other institutions, the
Absolutely.
IMs, as well as the MDIs, the XLRIs, whatever it is. So what do you have that they don't have?
Hmm.
Hopefully I'm giving you something that will help you succeed against them.
Right.
So I always talk about this, right? uh, you are potatoes in a sack of potatoes. Okay, if you are just going to remain a potato in a sack of potatoes, then there is nothing different about you. What we're trying to do in this curriculum is hopefully to be able to give you something that helps you tell a story about yourself, that you are different, you are at least a
Mhm.
purple potato.
Right.
right?
Some form of
Some
differentiation.
form of
Yeah.
differentiation, right? And that's really what we're trying to embed in the curriculum. So tomorrow, when you compete against any of these students from all the other institutions, your pedigree matters only to the extent that you graduate from this institution, whichever. So the first job, right?
Yeah.
But thereafter, how well you do on that job decides your career path.
True.
And if I give you the skills to be able to do that better than others, then you actually have an advantage. That's really what it is.
Yeah. So, we're really excited, of course, to start with this new curriculum. But for students coming in, the incoming batch who's going to start with this, what would you say, what kind of a mindset should they come with to make the most of this new revamped curriculum?
Be curious, always. Always try to learn, keep your mind open, and uh, have this attitude that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for you to be able to do something different. Chances are that for most of them, this is the last time they will be in the classroom.
Right.
Very, very small minority will do a PhD and all that. But you're going to be in the classroom for the very last time, over 2 years. Make the most of it. Keep your mind open. Be prepared to learn different things. Don't be like a horse with blinkers and say, oh, everybody is doing finance, so therefore I should also do finance, right? That herd mentality is not going to help.
Yeah.
Second, there is a lot of comfort students take in being good enough, okay, which is, as long as I'm passing average,
Yeah.
chalega,
Yeah.
right? That's
Just
not good
maintaining the
enough.
CGPA is not what
That's
you're
not
looking
good
at.
enough. You got to push yourself. Recruiters are looking for people with initiative,
Right.
people who go out of their way to learn something different, right? The more you keep your mind open to possibilities and take courses out of your comfort zone. I mean, I can share this with people. When I went to IIM Kolkata, I was an engineer from IIT. I knew nothing about finance and accounting and things like that.
Yeah.
My accounting professor was a terror. Okay, I mean, I could not handle it, right? He was really, really tough. Okay, and the kind of assessments or the assignments that he gave were really tough. Needless to say, I didn't do too well in accounting. But even today, if I were to say, or if we think back about the one course that had the biggest impact on me, it was that course, because I went out of my way to try to learn something.
Right.
And that's the difference. If we are all very comfortable and we say, this is, this is something that I know I will get an easy A, sometimes the best learning happens when you get a B or a C, because you force yourself to think more.
Drives you to do better.
Drives you to do better.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so I will always say, keep your mind open to possibilities. Tomorrow, there will be so many things that come your way, right? Different kinds of opportunities. And not everything is kind of, written in stone, like, this is what it is, and everything is prescribed for you. Sometimes, there is stuff which is completely out there, which you have no idea about.
Yeah. So, will it be fair to say, in a way, then, that we're not just preparing employees for the future, but we're preparing thinkers and leaders who will eventually be leading in all of these domains, right?
That's the idea, right? That's exactly the idea. That hopefully the kind of skills and the knowledge that we are imparting goes far beyond, like I said, goes far beyond that first job. If 5 years from now you come back to us and you tell us that you learned something in this curriculum that was so important and valuable to you, that you have now kind of been put on a fast track, I would be the happiest person in the world.
Right. And that's where IMI is, as an institute, I think, headed towards.
That's really what we're trying to do.
Great. So thank you, Professor Ramanathan, for
Thank you.
taking time out and really sharing so many details about what the new curriculum looks like. So
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Thank you, Farhana. Yeah.